Hi guys, it's Janine today. I'm in Cape Town for a change because I was invited to speak at the Wild Shot conference, and I've heard of Kirstenbosch being such a beautiful place, and I couldn't think of a nicer spot to compare the good old hardy 70 Mark II and the brand new Canon 90D for you. Can you believe this place is in the middle of Cape Town? Let's get going. There's going to be plenty more videos to come on this channel, so if you like our reviews, please don't forget to subscribe, press the bell button down below so you always get to hear of our new episodes. So it's unusual to compare the Canon 70 Mark II with the 90D, given that these cameras are both price-wise and professional-wise in two different leagues. The 7D, being a single-digit Canon model, would be naturally the more professional camera in comparison to the double-digit 90D model, which would therefore be more an entry level. However, there is 5 years between the release dates, and I want to see what technology has done. Can the new technology advances catch up with the 70 Mark II, and which one will be the better camera body nowadays? I'm going to compare these two cameras with 5 different categories. Number 1, I want to look at the autofocus. Number 2, I want to look at the sensor and the image quality. Number 3, at the frame rate and the memory capabilities of these cameras. Number 4 is the usability and build of these cameras. And number 5 is real world issues, such as your battery life, how robust are they in weather, in dust. Let's have a look and get going. In order to test the autofocus, the best way is to find a nice fast-moving subject. Kirstenbosch Garden is known for exquisite bird life, so let's have a look if we find something nice. Little fun fact on the side, Kirstenbosch is a World Heritage Site in the middle of Cape Town. And this Cape Floral Kingdom here has more than 9,600 unique floral species to it. That's more than in the entire United Kingdom. Can you believe that? It's phenomenal. Alright, I've been shooting now all morning in the beautiful Kirstenbosch Garden, and we found a nice shady spot under an ancient fig tree. Couldn't be any prettier. And while I know the 70 extremely well because I've been shooting it for a very long time, I tried to shoot a lot of birds in flight on the 90D this morning to test our autofocus category. It's very difficult to do an accurate test in real life scenarios because I can't ask the bird to fly the same distance over and over again. But let's get down to the specs first. The 70 has 65 autofocus points that you can move all across the screen, while the 90D only has 45. Both of the cameras are lacking the sides, which is a bit sad, but I'm sure Canon will get to that in the near future. Autofocus points are absolutely crucial in wildlife photography because what we do is we're shooting on a servo, or Nikon, it's continuous focusing, to make sure we can track the birds in flight and track any movement, and therefore we have to toggle that focus point around quite a bit in order to be able to shift and recompose our framing. The more autofocus points are available, the more accurate is our shot. So the 70 wins out on that one. Also, what's quite nice on the 70, I'll show you here in the back of the menu is completely adjustable for the autofocus. There's a whole chapter only dedicated to autofocus, which is missing on the 90D. And to me, one of the most important factors is our tracking sensitivity that we can adjust. I call it the stickiness of the camera. How long does a camera stay on a subject before it refocuses when you fall off? So if you have a bird waving on a little stick in the wind, instead of fishing for your focus all the time, you can make the camera ultra sticky to make sure the focus remains stuck to the bird. So you can fine adjust the autofocus system on the 70 way better than what you can on the 90D. As a result, here's a photo sequence of the sugar bird in flight, and you will see I lost the focus pretty quickly, unfortunately. It's such a pity because with that long tail I wish I would have had it sharp. But yeah, it just couldn't keep up with tracking the bird in the air. I've heard that live live view is much better with the tracking system. However, as I said, I couldn't convince the bird to fly for me again. All in all, this category is definitely dominated by the 7D. When it came out, it took over the old focusing system of the 1DX, which was custom made for wildlife photography, and the 90D just can't keep up entirely. All right, in this category, we want to compare the sensor and the image quality of these two beautiful cameras. In wildlife photography, you're often faced with weak light conditions or even scenarios where you have to shoot super fast and therefore your ISO is challenged. So let's see which camera performs better on this level. Both cameras have APS-C sensors, nearly the same size. The 90D is a little bit bigger than, only 1% bigger than the 7D. And that means we have a 1.6 crop sensor in both cameras, which is phenomenal because when we shoot on a 100 to 400 millimeter lens, we actually get more range and we don't have to carry such heavy gear around. The 90D has 32.5 megapixels, so way more pixels squeezed on the same size sensor than the 20 megapixels of the 7D. What that means, normally bigger size pixels deal way better with low light and high ISO scenarios. So in theory, the 7D should be the better camera here. However, the 7D is 5 years older and sensors have developed. So I want to see which one performs better. And we got this stunning little purple flower here, and we are in the outdoors, but you'll be surprised how high this will drive our ISO if we try and get a nice close-up shot. So for this test, I put both cameras on the same settings, 400ths of a second only, f7.1 and 6400 ISO. That's not an unusual ISO to shoot on in wildlife photography. And I'm going to compare the images side by side to see how bad the grain is and how well they perform. As you can see side by side, the 90D performs a bit better. It has less grain, especially if you shoot the histogram a little bit to the brighter side than what the 7D has. I remember from shooting the 7D for a long time that I didn't like shooting it higher than 3200 ISO, even when I was close to a subject. It started struggling. So in low light situations or high speed situations, the 90D is the clear winner. Less grain and a higher pixel sensor that we can crop much nicer at the end. 1 point for the 90D. Hey guys, there's a stunning sugar bird up there that I quickly want to try and catch. On a high speed continuous, I should be able to catch that. This brings us to our next category. That is frame rate and memory on these two cameras. Both cameras shoot on 10 frames per second, which is amazing. Gives me plenty of opportunity to try and catch that sugar bird up there. However, on the 7D, I hit the buffer much later, especially if I shoot on JPEG. I can shoot over 1000 frames before my buffer slows me down. Shooting RAW, the difference isn't so big. We're just over 30 with the 7D and 27 frames before we start buffering on the 90D. However, memory makes a huge difference. Our 7D Mark II has 2 memory slots, which is one SD card and one CF card slot. Yes, SD cards have become really fast nowadays. However, the CF cards are still considered the more sturdy and less corruptible cards, where you lose less pictures. At the same time, our 90D only has one card slot for an SD card. So if you try and shoot backup shots immediately, shoot RAW and JPEG on 2 different cards, your better option will be the 7D Mark II, and the category is definitely won by this baby here. I want to compare the bodies and ergonomics of the 7D Mark II with the 90D. I walked to the top of Kirstenbosch Garden, find myself a bit of shade because it's actually getting quite hot. So let's have a look at this together. The 7D Mark II, when it came out, was a smaller camera body, but wildlife related than what the 1DX was. With 910 grams, it's not particularly light. This particular model does have a battery grab on in addition, which makes it over 1 kg. I have pretty long fingers, but in general, I would say it lies very nicely in your hand. It has a very deep grip, so you never have to worry that the camera will fall out of your hand. Nice rubberization. So it feels very robust and solid when you go out into the field and shoot. One of my favorite things is the customizable buttons on the Canon. It has a big set button here in the back that your thumb falls to quite naturally, that you can press in and customize with any functionality that you would like. We have a little joystick up here that helps you to toggle the focus point around. Really important, like I mentioned in our autofocus section, to be able to choose a new focus very quickly. 2 wheels on this camera, top and bottom, fairly easy to reach in order to change anything between aperture, shutter or exposure compensation, what you would like to look at. Alrighty, given that this is a double-digit camera, it is to be expected that these cameras are a little bit lighter than our professional camera bodies. With only 700 grams, we're losing 200 grams of the weight, which is actually quite nice. And even though it is a little bit lighter and a little bit smaller, it still sits beautifully in your hand. They didn't make the grip too small. It still has a nice rubberization so that you don't feel it's going to slip out of your hand anytime soon. I can't say that the lack of size would be any disadvantage here. What I really enjoy about the 90D, Canon has introduced the joystick that we find on our lovely 5Ds and 7Ds, and it makes it so much easier to toggle our focus point around quickly in order to get the wildlife shot as fast as possible. We still have that inner circle that we find on the predecessor that used to be the way to toggle the focus point around, and quite frankly I would have taken it out because it takes space away that we could occupy with the outer wheel or with the set button. As you can see, the set button is way smaller than on the 7D, and if you have larger hands, especially for men, it becomes difficult to press it. It's not as intuitive and not as easily accessible, and even though you can still customize it, it's not as intuitive as the one before. We still have our wheels set at the same position. We've got the top wheel with a nice grip, the bottom wheel with a nice grip, and what I really enjoy about the 90D is this lovely flip screen, which we cannot find in any of the single-digit Canon models. I really don't understand, because it gives you an enormous amount of flexibility, especially if you want to shoot low on the ground without lying on your belly. It helps tremendously. It makes life so much easier. Apart from it being a flip screen, it is also a touch screen, and I'm not a huge fan of touch screens because you often access them in random moments that you didn't intend to. However, this touch screen needs to be activated by pressing one of the 2 available Q buttons, either the Q on the screen or the Q here in the back. Then you can get into something called your quick menu without having to search through the menu or the buttons. Very easy to access, especially when you're starting to get used to your camera at first. Really enjoying this function of the 90D, and I think the newer single-digit cameras could also work with something similar like that. For ergonomics and usability, I would say the overall winner remains to be the 90D. The lighter weight, the tilt screen with the touchscreen capabilities, as well as the newly found joystick, makes it so easy to handle. Weight is a huge issue nowadays if you start traveling. And even though the set button isn't as easy accessible as with the 7D, it is more easily accessible than on the 80D, which overall the 90D gets 1 score on this category. Before we move on to our next category, how's this for a view over there, guys? So in wildlife photography, we work a lot out in the field in dusty, wet, rainy environments. So I want to make a real-world review. Which camera is better for the outdoors? I'll start with our battery life. I must say the battery life of the 7D has never been a winner. It's only about 670 shots. Our 90D can give us double that amount. That's one of the reasons we got a battery grip on here, because we just simply can't afford to run out of battery. That obviously makes it a bit more bulky. However, we can start turning our camera vertically and have the same set of buttons right at our hand without dislocating our shoulder. So it's got a pro and a con. You can also just be prepared and just always have a few spare batteries in your pocket and double check your battery status. For your wetness and dust proof, the 70 has really geared up. It's weatherproof enhanced, and it becomes really, really difficult with those seals to break it. I've shot the 70 in the outdoors, in the rain, on safari, and I've never really had an issue. While the 90D is slightly weatherproof, I wouldn't trust it as much. I've managed to crash a few of the predecessor at this stage. It is not quite as robust. However, it is much lighter and can give you the double amount of shots out in the field. On top of that, the 70 will give you a lot more shutter counts on average before you might lose your shutter than what the 90D does. You can get 200,000 and above on this one. You can only get about half the amount of shutter counts before you have to replace it on the 90D. So overall, who wins this category? Well, when it comes to robustness and usefulness in the field, even though your battery life isn't the best, I would definitely go with the 7D. At this point, I also want to mention none of this is sponsored. We buy all our gear ourselves out in the field for our guests, and we just happen to work quite a bit with Canon, and this is a completely impartial comparison between the 90D and the 7D Mark II. In our competition, out of 5 categories, the 7D has won 3 of them, so definitely has gone ahead in the race. However, in photography, it always depends. What is more important to you, the ruggedness, the quick focusing, or is it more important that you get a cleaner, clearer image that you can crop tighter at the end? Then maybe the 90D remains the option for you. The tilt screen, the lightness of the camera. And I have to mention, if you do like movie making, the 90D now has a 4K option and even a slow-mo function than the 7D didn't have. So in movie making and focusing in your movie, the 90D completely outperforms the 7D. If you ever take movies, that might be an option for you. Nevertheless, the 7D remains a good old workhorse despite being 5 years old. It's a phenomenal wildlife camera. Pack a few extra batteries and you will be good to go. I hope you enjoyed this day with me in Kirstenbosch. It was my first time here and it is an absolutely beautiful botanical garden. If you have any comments or ideas what else we need to review, please leave that in the comment section below, and I hope I see you soon again. Bye bye.